Collective. Hello, hello, my loves. Welcome to Vivid Vibration. My name is Christina. I hope y'all are doing well. Collective. I tried to find the book to this deck. I know I have it somewhere. I don't know. I couldn't find it anywhere. But I'm glad y'all enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed it too. So I decided to go ahead and start with the Archetype Guidebook again tonight. We got quite a few cards, so we'll start with that. We got the Sword and the Mother, Alithia and Anima Mundi, the Mountain, the Kiss, and the Medallion. Well, I feel like yesterday there was an idea of a reward, right? Um, but I want to start with the Sword and the Mother because the Mother is the idea of an identity, right? The book um, speaks to the idea of, like the role that the mother plays, but, the mother can lose their identity in their children, right? And when they take their identity on through their children, I think a lot of times what that does to the children is that it sets improper expectations. I think that um, one thing that I'm very grateful for is that, like, I have, well, my dad, not my mom, but my dad is always doing things, always learning more, always being very active. And, I've always been very blessed to witness that because um, I think it's helped me to strengthen my own personal sense of identity because I've borne witness to what it looks like when somebody else does that, right? And I feel like there's almost this idea of losing yourself in the identity of something else. Yeah, I mean, so in terms of a mother, that would be like losing your identity, to your children. Um, Losing your identity in a relationship, yeah, because I mean, a lot of times that happens, it's like people get into relationships and then they just kind of like somehow seem to disappear. Those, in my opinion, always tend to be very like those really unhealthy relationships. But I think that, again, when you've got two people who are very much independently themselves and they come together, then they strengthen one another rather than like cave in on one another. But it's not uncommon to bear witness to relationships where people cave in on each other. They bring out the worst in each other. Um, so however that resonates for you, I do feel like there's something that you are breaking away from, which again, that's been in the reads for a hot minute. Just that idea of separation. The sword is the idea of like discernment, right? Also been in the reads a lot, but cutting away with the things that create confusion. Um, and I feel like there's there's very much a sense of like reclamation of self because yeah, yeah, I don't know. This very much feels like an energy of just like an unhealthy relationship. Um, and you should always want to be with someone who wants to see you win. Like if you're with somebody who is not in your corner, your biggest fan, the fuck are you doing with them? You know what I mean? Like, no. You should always hold that standard for the people you're in the closest relationships with that you would hold for yourself, right? And if you're your own biggest cheerleader, then you should only be allowing people in your life who are cheering for you, speaking blessings over you, because again, it's that idea of like, are you flourishing in this relationship, or is this relationship suffocating you? Um, because attachment is oftentimes um, mistaken for love. Um, But love will build you up, right? Love will hold you down, not like hold you under them, but like keep that solid foundation for you, be that place that you can turn to. Um, and maybe that's something that you've been discovering because, well, I feel like somebody who's been engaged with their community, engaged with friends, engaged with whatever. And when you're engaged with healthy friendships, um, like healthy friendships are the most detrimental things to unhealthy relationships, romantic relationships, because if like homegirl is locked down with some dude that just sucks the life out of her, you gotta be there to remind her who the fuck she is. You know what I mean? And same for guys, like you guys should always be hyping each other up. Um, there's this, who's the guy on SNL? Oh my God, I love him. Marcelo, he's Cuban Dominican, and he's a comedian. He has this skit about being a Latin man who grew up with Latin women, Latino women, and he'd be at school and he'd play sports and be all tough, and then he'd go home and like he'd see his mom in an outfit and he'd be like, oh, like hyping her up and like flipping on the femininity and like being her biggest cheerleader. And that like that was what it meant to grow up with women, was to embody that femininity freely, which I just think is so beautiful because yes. um, but when you have that kind of energy, when you have that kind of hype around you, you start to awaken to the the ways that the unhealthy relationships have mistreated you. Like the way that they speak poorly over you. Like I just kind of feel like this, you deserve better, right? You deserve the world. Yeah, there was a God. That's been a few years ago. I feel like since I've heard that or seen that anywhere, but something about the idea of like you can be the whole package and show up at the wrong door, and they won't know what to do with you. You know what I mean? And I feel like you have been a whole package and you have just been at the wrong doors. Um, whether that is in a like a romantic relationship scenarios or with friends or I don't know. I mean, those of us who have separated from family, and just knowing that like it's not a healthy environment to be in, and so it's one that you just choose to not be a part of because it's more detrimental than it is anything else. And there comes a point in time where you have to recognize the fact that like you're doing it, it's almost like practicing self-harm by putting yourself in those situations, right? And so you stop doing that because why would you want to exert any energy and all the negativity when you have all of this positivity that you have been experiencing, right? I love that for you. I love that for all of us. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a lesson that I learned a while ago. Um, but it was a lesson that I think I really had drilled home in a lot of ways for me. Just stark contrasts of people and stark contrast of communities and stark contrast of experiences and but Spirit had a point to make and wanted to make sure that I got it loud and clear. you know but I don't think that that's uncommon to me. I think any of us have experienced you know attachment as love or unhealthy relationships that left us feeling really just like bad about ourselves, and if you leave somebody's presence and you feel bad about yourself after you were with that person, that's not your person. Whether that is friend, business, romantic, however, you shouldn't be engaged with that. And I think you know that. I think that's one of those, well, yeah, I know. Um, but it's not always as easy as it sounds, right? Because you factor in, like loneliness, or, like, well, you've known them for a long time, or, like, well, they pay really well, or, like whatever justification you had for accepting less than what you deserved. Like it's exhibited itself to you, and you are, I think, coming out of that lesson in a really big way. I'm sure that will resonate differently for all of us because we're all experiencing life in our own ways. But yeah, take what resonates, how it resonates, and leave the rest. I feel like this definitely has been just like a present theme in the reads. The mountain is the idea. Well, there are two journeys that you can take on the mountain. You can either go on the outside of the mountain, or you can go on the inside of the mountain. And the outside of the mountain is still a very beautiful journey, but you don't get the treasure, you don't get the insight, you don't get the understanding. And so, for my ones here, I really do feel like there's just been this idea of going inside and discovering your value. And I think as you have uncovered that value, you've started to attract people to you who recognize that value. And for some of you, it could be that, like, there's somebody in your life who is upset about that. They're jealous. They don't want to see you win. They don't want to see you, whatever it is that you're doing. I feel like they've been sprinkling negativity on it every chance they get. There's sirens going on. But that only works if you allow for them to, like, sincerely isolate you from the communities that are good, healthy, positive communities, which, again, that's that idea of those relationships that cave in on themselves because there's like too much codependent energy, and I think the jealousy and the negative the negative comments, the backhanded compliments, however it exhibits itself. But you've outgrown that. You've, I think, gone to internalized your value in such a way that it can't be questioned now. And I don't know that you ever genuinely questioned it. I think that was part of your frustration with it, right? Like, that's not true. That's not real. That's not, like, why would you say something like that? And a lot of times people are just really dismissive, but pay attention to, like, what people say jokingly, because they're probably just saying what they really mean and trying to gaslight you out of being able to call them on their shit, you know? The medallion and the kiss. The kiss is my favorite relationship card in this deck because it's just the idea that all you have to do is reach out your hand and that person is there. Like, you're never truly alone. It's like that romantic, close bond. And you can always tell people who are comfortable with each other, because there's no question. I don't know. Well, because you can, like, when people are friends, there's no question that they're friends. There's no question that, like, this person knows what I'm thinking and I don't even have to say anything. I can just look at them and they know, you know what I mean? And there's like a whole conversation that's already gone down. You can recognize that energy versus the energy of people who are uncomfortable with each other, or, yeah, I don't know. Well, and when I worked uptown especially, but so many tourists would come in and you get a lot of couples, but you could always tell the ones who were, like, happily married, who just kind of, like, spoke as though they were one person, you know what I mean? Versus the ones who were just, like, snipping at each other and just, like, ooh, like, wouldn't want that. yeah, but I feel like, again, this is for an energy that's already exited that lesson. Like, I already learned that lesson. I don't need to learn it again. Okay, thank you. Right? Because what I want is something sincere. What I want is something real. What I want is something that is so comfortably fit to me that it's as though, like I'm speaking as myself. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that goes for anything. Again, I mean, this does feel very like relationship focused, but even in business, like the two women that I work for, they're like, her business partner was her husband, and they joke, well, she got me in the divorce, we've been together for 20 years now. Yeah, or like Nancy and Pinky, they've been friends for over 20 years. You know what I mean? Pinky comes every morning and has coffee. It's just like, like they have each other, and there's nobody would ever question their friendship. So again, relationships, friendships, business partners, there is that sense of just knowing that no matter what, like that person is there. Um, yeah, I love that show, Res Dogs. Oh, bawled my eyes. But yeah, like those kids, like that type of bond. You know what I mean? I just feel like there are people in life who we bond with, and those bonds are so almost like instantaneous, that they can't really be questioned. In fact, I don't think that anybody ever does. You know, but those are the types of relationships that I think most of us want. Nobody really wants to be, well, yeah, that's not true, but yeah, some people love to be surrounded by, it's more about quantity than quality. But that's because they're low quality people, they have low quality energy, low quality morale, morality, abandoned worry. But I feel like the abandoned worry really and truly is that what is what is for you will be yours, will be for you, is what you will have. Um, yeah, sometimes I do think that it's just a matter of like honoring the process of having belief, having faith, in believing in our own worth and our own value, and what that means across the board. Because one thing, point of contention that I have with our society, just like in terms of like American society, quite possibly world society, but we won't go that far out. But if it resonates, take what resonates and leave the rest. But, like if you look at people in power or people in leadership, there's almost this idea that like the more you've accomplished, the shittier of a person you can be, you know. I think that's why in a lot of these cases of, like child trafficking and a lot of the issues that we face, the people who are the ones who are participating in this are like teachers and ministers and police officers and everyone that we were taught to look up to. Like businessmen, oh, smart businessman, horrible person, like nasty ass soul, like demons popping out that bitch. Do you see that? They don't see that. I don't know how they don't see that. you know? But that's real. And I think, even in, well, I don't know, like the Stepford world community, of like being a wife and I don't know, trophy wives are not uncommon. But usually those women hate their husbands and their husbands hate their wives, and there's a lot of resentment there. Why? Because they're obligated to be with each other, but they don't sincerely love each other. They don't actually bond. They just made a good fiscal arrangement for each other, and they have their boxes that they checked, and they didn't really concern themselves with like the soul of one another. But 9 times out of 10, it's because either they weren't aware that they had soul, or they just don't have any at all. But for a lot of people who do, I think there is also that experience of when you have like a big soul, when you're a big spirit, people don't like that because most people don't embody that much spirit. I think, yeah, a lot of that can be tied back to racism, because, well, that's its own conversation. We won't go there. Not right now, at least. But anyways, I think that, again, it's that lesson of, like either coming out of a lesson of unhealthy attachment, or coming out of a lesson of what are you willing to sacrifice for image? Like what are you willing to sacrifice for true happiness? And for a lot of us, I think sacrificing and sacrificing and sacrificing, thinking, okay, maybe I'm just never going to experience happiness in that way. Or, like I just need to like focus over here, but I'm not going to sacrifice my character just to cling to something. And maybe there have been these instances where you've clung to something but felt like you were somehow sacrificing yourself by doing that, and awakening to the reality that you don't have to do that. Maybe you have to be a little bit more patient, but at least you're not sacrificing yourself, sacrificing your character, sacrificing your dignity, sacrificing your freedom of growth and development. But when you're not sacrificing all of that, there is a sense of abandoning worry, because what do you have to lose? Which then brings you to that level of, well, at this point, I have created my own sense of happiness, and unless you are enhancing that, you are detracting from it. And if you're detracting from it, you're not touching it. You know what I mean? And then we reach discernment of who has access to our value and what that value is to us. Yeah, because it's going to be different for everyone, These are general reads. Take what resonates for you, how it resonates for you. And again, it can resonate in a number of ways, because as above, so below, if you are experiencing it in one area of your life, you're probably experiencing it in another area as well. And for those of us who have been working to deal with those areas so that now they are all where they need to be in the positive side and not the negative side. Yeah. Sometimes I think that you just need that little reminder of like, you deserve every beautiful thing in the world, every beautiful thing that you want, every beautiful thing that you can see, every beautiful thing that Spirit shows to you. Success in your career, freedom in your creativity, expansion in your community, beautiful, healthy love, all of those things. Eight of Pentacles, manipulation. Seven of Pentacles, just one thing after another thing after another thing, one person after another person after another person, one community after another community after another community. You know what I mean? Ugh, dealing with some shit. But following your intuition, because you're not following the bullshit, you know what I mean? And I think that it's opening doors for you. Again, that's been in the reads, but what was yesterday? Is it a new dawn? Doors are opening. All good things. Empress and the Four of Swords. Well, the Four of Swords is confusion. Oh, the moon again. But well, I feel like the clearing is, it feels like a clearing of emotions, honestly. Because anytime you're in one of those situations or those types of situations, whether it's work or friends or relationships, and again, I'm not saying this in opposition of compromise, because if you're dealing with people who are able to compromise with you and you are able to engage in that with them, these aren't the kinds of issues that you're going to run up against. This is for people who are dealing with people who have an inability to compromise, an inability to comprehend, um, only a desire to control, only a desire to manipulate, only a desire to tear you down to build themselves up. But when you're surrounded with that energy, it can be very confusing because, you do kind of wonder, like, is it me? I'm pretty sure it's not me. But then you go inside and you work on self, and then you attract communities where you experience good, healthy experiences and friendships and relationships and community, and you realize, okay, yeah, no, I'm definitely capable of being in healthy relationships. I'm definitely capable of being a part of a healthy community. I'm definitely capable of engaging in healthy relationships. So it's not me, it's the people that I'm surrounding myself with, and I need to not surround myself with those people, that energy, however it peeps out at you from the world. But I really just think that you are no longer dealing with that, trusting in your intuition, because we know that, like, people show themselves very quickly. It well, yes, I mean, I do have an advantage. I get that. But I also have an advantage of watching everybody else sort through that. So, um, but it can be very confusing because you're usually getting something positive, right? And it's like for the one positive, there's five negative. But the positive is positive enough that you're willing to take the five negative with it. That ultimately ends up draining you mentally, emotionally, spiritually, right? But you needed to start dealing with those leaks here and then here and then here and then here and then here until you were free from the flood of fear. Because I think ultimately what people seek to plant in us is fear. Fear that we're not good enough, fear that um, nobody will take you seriously, fear that I don't know. You know, for somebody here, there's really just this idea of comparison. And the beautiful thing about individuality, and I'm a huge advocate for individuality. I have a whole thing about it, that I am excited to share with the world at some point, but not yet. But I genuinely believe in my heart and soul that creation is dependent upon diversity, and diversity exists in each individual, right? Like if you take it to something like a friend group, right? Any plot or character base for, like stories, there's always like the dynamics of the characters. I don't know, like Sex in the City. And everybody can relate to one of the characters, and usually you can relate to multiple of the characters, and that's what makes it so, like, because they each embody the dynamics of their own individual personalities, their own character traits. The diversity creates a complete story. Without it, it's a diatribe of narcissism. You know what I mean? Like, it's so important. But I feel like there's this sense of, well, I don't know, because I feel like I have a couple of really strong energies coming through. One is the idea of competition. And you're with somebody who wants you to compare yourself to them every single step of the way. And it's like, okay, there's healthy competition. Yeah, you can have healthy competition, like egging each other on and pushing each other along and doing those things. Yeah, healthy competition for sure. Again, that's not what I'm addressing here. I'm talking about an unhealthy competition where somebody feels like they are not enough because they're not that person. Because the reality of it is that person isn't this person isn't that person, this person isn't that person, who isn't that person, who isn't that person. You know what I mean? And everyone has a role in the story of the collective, right? So if it's the competition, I feel like you're separating from people who are competitive in an unhealthy manner. If it's an attachment style relationship where you feel isolated because they don't want, they almost like this, well, they don't want anybody to know about you, like you belong to me, and they nitpick you all of the time because they want you to exist in that state of lack so that you won't attract abundance. Very unhealthy, very unhealthy. However, that is, it has exhibited itself in your life. You've gone through the process of that. I think removing that, and maybe there's been this sense of somehow like touching base with that. I don't know, maybe you ran into somebody or something, I don't know, like, and it could be that this has already happened or it's something that you're coming into, and it's just like a point of encouragement to say, hey, like, don't forget who you are, don't forget how important you are, don't forget how lovable you are and how worthy you are of all of the beautiful things that spirit wants to give you, like, look out if that's the case and you're like, I don't know, feeling confused about something in terms of that. Because the direction that you're going is very, the Empress in this deck is the idea of the harvest, right? She's gathering her harvest. You've worked too hard. You've accomplished too much. You've grown too much. You've learned the value of who you are outside of another person. Yeah, you're reclaiming yourself. And I love that because when you are standing holy in who you are, you're going to attract people who are holy themselves as well. And then you can, well, if you have that competitive energy, I don't know. I'm gonna go tarot on you real quick, or astrology on you real quick. I'm a Leo sun, Leo moon, Leo Venus. Leo stellium. I am a hella proud person, super independent, but like also like a ride or die. And when I love loud, I love proud. I will shout from the rooftop. Everyone will know, like, yeah, at my kids' games, I was that mom who was like, yeah, like, when my friends, do something, I am that friend who is hype, like I will hype. I live for the hype, and I will always bring the hype, But it's that boisterous love, that I embody. But I feel like you're stepping into some serious hype. whether it's hype with your new job, hype with a new community, hype with a new relationship, hype with friends, whatever it is that you're leaving behind, you're stepping into something that is like so full of so much hype. I don't know that it does. It feels like the reward, the medallion, the thing that you're seeking. Because I'm sorry, anybody who works hard wants to be honored for that, like, and even the people who are modest, who play humble, and then like throw down, oh yeah, and I've traveled the world, oh yeah, and I do this, and I'm just a super fantastic human being. You know what I mean? I feel like those people deserve the most hype though, because they're not, like, they carry humility, and I just think that humility is such an important asset to authenticity, because the second people lose their sense of humility in the world, is the second that they become like ego driven, inauthentic, gross competitive, gross tear you down, attachment. You know what I mean? Like, that is just like, ugh. But listen, living in this world, you are going to find it 10 ways to Tuesday. It is what it is. But it's not all that there is. Yeah, I mean, for me, I guess, like, in terms of my channel, I think the way that I've experienced that over the years, is I do have a lot of knowledge about a lot of different things, but I'm also channeling, you know what I mean? And so there's a lot of information floating around there, and I'll pull information like yesterday, the seven deadly sins, not the seven layers of hell, but I was thinking Inferno, and then that was there, and you know what I mean. But I'm channeling, so I'm not really worried about it, like the precision of what I'm saying. It's more about the story, like the meaning behind the story, But if I were to prepare something, it would lose you would lose the authentic experience of it, because when I'm channeling, I'm also engaged in, like, whatever conversations are being presented to me in terms of the energy of the people who are watching me, so people experience me, like speaking things back to themselves, like sitting in positions that they sit in, or, like making faces that they make. And it's the experience of it would be completely removed if I sat down and channeled, and then, like, it would ruin it, but I've had people who want to be like, oh, well, you're not really, you're really stupid, and you don't da 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 da, because I don't, that's not the point of what I'm doing. Like, is that where I would like to be capped out with what I do? No, but in terms of this for me, like, I wouldn't do it any other way, because I think that's what creates the intimacy in the reads. But, like, I didn't really think about it until I was being criticized for it. And then I was like, actually, you're wrong, but whatever, And that would be an example of how I have experienced that. But you can experience that in a number of ways. Um, so apply it to you, how it applies to you, Four of clovers, three of diamonds. The key nearby is a certain augury of success, but if surrounded by unlucky cards, the prognostication is illness. The money safe indicates riches. If shut side is toward the person, it denotes loss by speculation. Yeah. Well, and it's always important to know your audience. And you're going to have a different audience in mind, right? I mean, for my marketers out there, you know this. Like depending on the content that you're releasing, or like however that presents itself, you're going to be reaching different audiences according to what it is that you're doing. Um, and I feel like there has been an idea of like shifting your energy and shifting your audience. So I don't know how that'll play out for you as an individual, but that could definitely be a thing. Um, Maybe you're working on something new, and like you've run it by some people and they're all very critical of it, and you're faced with the decision, like, do I listen to them, or do I trust, like my gut, and go in the or spirit, go in the direction that I feel like I actually need to go in. um, yeah, if it's work, if it's project, if it's dealing with a group of people, friends, relationship. Again, general reads, they can play out a number of ways, but I do feel like there is this either or. There's no in between, there's no gray area here. It's killing my Libras out there. They love the in between, they love to live in the gray. Well, because it's the idea of taking everyone into consideration, but it's not our job to concern ourselves with people who, that, like, you're not my target audience, so why would I worry about you? You know what I mean? Like, you don't comprehend, so I'm not going to adjust my style or my vision or my gifts to accommodate demands from people who, like, they don't even know what I'm like, they don't even get it. You know what I mean? And I know I'm not stupid, so I don't, like, yeah, I'll make mistakes, whatever. I'm channeling. I didn't sit down and research a bunch of information to share. Like, in whatever information that I do consume, that I share, if I make a mistake, I'm going to try and go back and fix it, so that, like, I'm not spreading misinformation. But again, it's like, if that's not the point of what I'm doing, then that's ultimately not a criticism that I'm going to take to heart, in a real way. Like, if you're in a relationship with somebody and they're like, I don't know. I remember this one time in college, I dated this guy. Ugh, the first time I ever, the first time I ever saw him, he was standing in front of in the cafeteria with a megaphone, and he was a Teamster and super into just like social justice of all forms. We were a part of a community garden, and yeah, we worked with the homeless shelter there, and just like very much for the people. And I fell in love with him, and he, I think at that point in time in my life, like, I was coming out of the church, that, like, I had rejected the church and the church had rejected me, and it was a whole big transition for me. But like, always very passionate for people, so it was natural that I would go from a religious person to a political person, I suppose. I was I was always in the general vicinity of like what it was that I was ultimately going for, in terms of, I think, spirituality and activism and things of that nature. But I had to figure it out. But he hated when I would wear lipstick. Oh, he would be like, "You look like such a whore," and it was just like, or I would wear a shirt, and I wear shirts that are, low cut V necks, but I mean, I've got tiny little boobs. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm out here just letting my tits hang out. And if I did have big boobs and I wanted to let my tits hang out, what the fuck ever. It's my body, my choice. You know what I mean? Never any man's place to tell any woman how she can or cannot dress. But he would always, just like tear me down, tear me down, tear me down. Um, Obviously, that didn't work, but it was very tumultuous because, like, all of the things that I loved about him, but he wasn't able to be engaged in a healthy relationship. Um, So if it's somebody who's in a relationship and you're like, well, I really love this person, but they're always tearing you down. That's not your person. You have an unhealthy attachment to them, and the love that you are experiencing is not a healthy love. And if it's not a healthy love, you are not going to lead a healthy life, and it's going to poison every area of your life. Um, and that's facts, no matter what kind of relationship it is. Um, but I guess we just needed to have a conversation about that. Um, okay, so we did those, and we'll end with the archetype. The mystic. Yes, the mystic is psychic knowing. Intuition, spirit, whether you have already been in conversation with spirit and you already know that there's something that you need to move away from, or there's something in your life that's going on and spirit is trying to get your attention and trying to tell you, hey, 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 that's not good for you. Those people aren't good for you. That relationship is not good for you. That business deal, like it might look pretty, but the terms and conditions are not. You're gonna get screwed over with those. Don't do that, right? Whatever part of this energy you're in, um, you already know why you're breaking away from it, why you need to break away from it, and maybe you just need a little, like a good job, keep going, do the damn thing, live your best life, be your best person, be your best self, and trust that you will attract what's meant for you, because again, I think that we've been fed the idea that we've been abandoned, that spirit doesn't really care, um, but that's a lie. And we know that. And I think that's changing. And I love that. Keep going, keep doing the damn thing, keep trusting in spirit, trust in your body, trust in your intuition, trust in the process, and take pride in the fact that you've outgrown things that you've outgrown, because that's kind of the point, right? All right, well, I love y'all so much, and I hope this resonates with you. If it does, please do give me a like, share, and subscribe, and I will see y'all again soon. Bye.